This video is for the Teddy Tote and I'm going to show you how to assemble the handle. Following the instructions, mark the lines as indicated and we're going to place the template underneath the horizontal line that we've drawn, making sure that the dotted line is in line with that centre line, and draw round the template. And we're doing this on the interfacing side, so now we have our handle shape. Place right sides together with the lining piece and you would pin all the way round to hold that in place. Pay particular attention to the top edge. These need to be in line. Stitch round the oval shape. You want to actually be stitching on the line. I decrease my stitch to a 1.2, which may sound really small, but when you're sewing around curves, the smaller the stitch, the neater it will be, because the needle goes up and down more times and you'll be able to navigate those curves much easier. At this point, the two fabrics are right sides together and they're joined at this section. Remove all your pins and clips, fold in half, making sure that all the lining fabric is out of the way, and we're going to make a small snip. All this is doing is giving us access to get to this oval shape. Open it back out, making sure all the lining fabric is out of the way. We're going to trim this section. You can either trim 1/4 of an inch all the way around. If you do this option, then you need to do some little V's to reduce the tension around the curve section, but I'm going to go fairly close to the stitch line, making sure that I don't go into any of the stitches around this oval section. We don't want any tension around the curve area. I'm using a really small sharp pair of scissors. I find that it's easier to see where I'm cutting. So now we have the handle section cut out. Turn over so that you have the lining uppermost, and we're going to take the lining and we're going to push it through the hole, all the way through. Once you've pulled it all through, you're now going to have wrong sides together. The aim here is to get this oval as neat as you possibly can and line these two fabrics up together. A top tip is to start from the bottom and press upwards. We press the two layers together and go up towards the oval. Spend a little bit of time here pushing the two layers together. As you've cut them exactly the same size, they will fit, they should fit exactly. Now when you're pressing the oval, you want to try and get the seam between the two fabrics running round the centre of the inner oval. Don't force it. Top tip is to use a small iron or the end of the iron, and take your time. Once you've pressed it, turn it over and give the front a press as well. Stitch round the outside of the oval. I like to use a decorative stitch for this step, but you can use a straight stitch. Just take your time. Ideally, as it's a top stitch, you would increase the stitch, but as I previously said, if you do that, the machine tends to run away with you, so you want to keep the stitch length either a decorative stitch or a shorter stitch length. When you've done that, look at your instructions and mark down as instructed, and then we're going to fold that top. This is the outer panel. We're going to fold that and press it, and then turn it over, and we're going to do the same with the lining. But this time, when you fold and press it, you want to make sure that it's just a fraction, and I mean just a fraction below that outer panel. Make sure that the wadding is inside. You want to make sure it's a fraction below, and that way when we do the stitching to secure the top of the bag, you're not going to see the lining peeping out. Once you've sewn around the ovals and pressed the top bits, we're going to open them back out just for now and place right sides together, the outers right side. Pay particular attention to this seam, making sure that you line this seam up exactly. Pin or clip in place, pin all the way round. You want to make sure that the lining is well out of the way here. We don't want to be stitching any lining. Once it's pinned and clipped, sew down here, and up here. Once the outer panels have been sewn together, it's time to do exactly the same for the lining. It may seem a little bit tricky because the lining is actually joined at the handle section. So a top tip here is to place the bottom of the linings right sides together. So pull the linings and place the bottoms right side together. Pin or clip in place and then sew this seam first. Now we have sewn this seam, it makes it easier to see how the lining goes together. If you locate the corners and follow down, it makes it a little bit easier to see how the sides go together. So we pin or clip the side and do the same for the other and sew them together. Make sure that all the lining, all the outer fabric is well out of the way, especially with the smaller bag, as it will try and get involved. At this point, it does look rather odd, but trust the process here. The next thing to do is to create the corners. Finger press the seam in opposite directions so that when you pull the raw edges on the same corner together, one seam goes that way and one seam goes this way, and then they're going to nest together. And that will give you a really neat intersection of your corners. Pin or clip this edge in place. Now it really is worth pinning or clipping here because you'll find that the fabric is a little bit awkward to get under the machine. And then follow the instructions to sew the box corners up on all four corners. Once you've sewn all the corners, turn the bag right side out. There is a gap at the top that is big enough to push the bag out. Pop the corners of the outer out, push them out really well. And this is a great opportunity to see where lining, taking the step to line up the crosshatch really pays off, because now you can see that it's going round in a continual line. Push the lining down inside of the bag. Again, pushing the corners out well. Push them, the inner ones, into the outers. Once you've done that, turn the top of the bag over. It should be quite easy to do this because remember, we've already pressed this once. So we push it over and then line up the lining. Again, that has already been pre-creased with the iron. A top tip, if you pin or clip each seam first to make sure they're in alignment. And don't forget, the lining was pressed very slightly below the outer fabric, and then do the centre of the handle first as well, and then pin or clip all the bits in between. And the great thing about this is you do have a little bit of wiggle room because you're not going to see the lining inside. So if you do need to make any adjustments, now is the time to do it. And you would pin or clip all the way around that outer edge. And then to finish, going to stitch just below the edge. Now it's up to you if you want to have the lining facing so you make sure that you catch it, or you want to have the outer to get the stitches really neat on the outside. But once you've done that and sewn that top edge together, your bag is complete.